Hi, my name is Diana Iacosavis, and I'm sitting here today with retired OPP police officer Cam Woolley and managing partner of Diamond Diamond lawyers Sandra. And today, our topic of discussion is the difference between a police investigation and a personal injury lawyer's investigation in the case of a motor vehicle accident.
This becomes a big discussion point for me with new clients that come in because they watch like CSI or Law and Order and they say, well, can't you just like take off the fingerprints and DNA analysis? And we don't do that. But the truth of the matter is you don't even do that. But Cam, tell me how it works with you guys.
Well, in a serious injury and fatality collision, there's going to be a thorough investigation, and there may actually be DNA collected from airbags, something like that, where the identity of a driver is perhaps in question. But the police are there to determine if there is a breach of the law. Police are not there to determine liability, and sometimes they're going to be pretty much the same thing. Maybe the drunk guy was speeding and hit somebody. Well, the police information is going to be basically what you're going to be using in your case. But there'll be other times when the drunk driver actually perhaps wasn't even at fault. So it's going to be in your court to determine civil liability. And
just so people understand, how far does the police go for minor car crashes that don't involve a fatality or a serious injury?
Yeah, I'd like to know that.
Well, frankly, they aren't typically even in investigations. These days, self-reporting. People go to a collision reporting center. Some of them are even starting to do things like that online. So there'll be damage documented, usually photographed at a reporting center, and statements taken from any witnesses or involved drivers. In some cases, if the police attend personally and there's evidence for a charge, they'll do that. But the best thing people can do to protect themselves, and especially to help Sandra and the team at Diamond Diamond later, is to make sure that they personally collect a lot of this information. So make sure you photograph the other drivers' license, ownership, and insurance, photograph the scene and the damage, because if there's some sort of dispute later, especially with these report at the collision reporting centers, you might be in big trouble.
It's extremely helpful for us to have all the information straight from the scene, because and before the cars are moved, because it's important to see what angle people hit themselves out. Because basically what we try to do sometimes without getting a very expensive forensic engineering report is just try to recreate it. Like if you're getting hit by the behind or the left back, we can kind of figure out where the cars are without any further investigation. I know the police don't determine fault, but a lot of the times their conclusions are very helpful for us in the personal injury world. They're not the be-all and end-all, but they're very helpful. And if you're charged with something under the Highway Traffic Act, for example, unsafe left, making an unsafe left, speeding, all of that stuff, if you're convicted, that's admissible in a personal injury action. So you can't admit guilt in one action and then admit not guilt in another. You can explain it, you can explain extenuating circumstances, but if I'm pleading guilty to an unsafe lane changeway and then an unsafe left turn, and then in my personal injury accident I said, oh no, I didn't make an unsafe left turn, that's not, you can't do that.
What if they fight the ticket though? Like
if you fight the ticket, yes. So if you fight the ticket, you fight the charge, and you get not guilty on the charge, then in the personal injury action you can maintain that guilt, but you can't, in two courts, you can't make the same plea. It makes sense, right? You can't say in the murder charge, you can't say I didn't kill them, and then in the civil charge say I did kill them, or vice versa. You got to maintain the same story, so to speak, throughout the whole thing. So for us, it's interesting. For us in personal injury, the police officer's testimony is the most credible, because unlike in criminal, where I know they go after the credibility of the police officer and they start to say, you know, they're biased or racist, and there's all sorts of these allegations that go against them. In personal injury, that seems to go by the wayside, because the feeling of the juries have been, well, why would the cop lie? It's a traffic thing, right? It's not like they're trying to cover their butt on a false arrest or something like that. Why would they lie in a personal injury thing where they're coming after the fact? The accident already happened. So I know for us, when we call the police to the stand, any notes they have from the scene, if they're at the scene, or anything that they've done in terms of the investigation, is very persuasive on the way the personal injury action is going to go. And again, we don't have to prove things beyond a reasonable doubt, but if the police officer is going to get on the stand and say, well, you know, Mr. Jones is at fault for the accident, that's going to hold heavy weight with the jury.
And how important are the witnesses, though, that you collect at the scene versus what because you're saying they're going to rely on the police, but what about like this Mr. Joe Smith who witnessed the whole thing happen? The police officers are just reporting after the fact.
Well, sometimes the witnesses can't be trusted. And I did spend a lot of my career reconstructing, doing the forensics, if you will, on the crashes. And I'd get to the scene and the officer that was there would usually run up and want to tell me what happened. And I'd be, oh, I don't want to hear.
Right.
And then I'd go in to see what the evidence told me. And many times it was different than what the drivers and even witnesses claimed had happened. And if the physical evidence tells the truth. Another thing to keep in mind, too, is Highway Traffic Act or traffic tickets. Those are absolute liability offenses. So excuses legally don't matter, although sometimes justice of the peace may take it into account some sort of excuse, but there's typically no sort of excuses given there. And as you mentioned, too, somebody can't be 10 or 20% guilty, but they can be 20% responsible. But another thing is police may not document some things that could affect liability, especially if the liability falls towards a crown or municipality. So let's just say it's bad weather and MTO maybe didn't do a very good job of plowing or plow the roads in such a way that created a bigger mess. And I've seen that happen.
Or in the event of a snowfall actually happening at the same time.
Yeah, if the snowfall happens at the same time, I'd say they've got a pretty good defense. But I've seen cases where they put the brine down, mixed it wrong, and then basically Zamboni the road and turned it to ice. So as a police officer, I made notes, but that wasn't, not all coppers are going to do that. They might not look at evidence that shows neglect on the part of the municipality. They're just there dealing with the crash. So there are things that Sandra would look into that the police might not. I might be just looking, did the person make a turn left improperly at the stoplight?
Yeah. That's all you want to know.
I just did. Was there a breach of the law? Well, was that stoplight actually in a stupid place? And I've seen that where they're just over a hill and you don't have time. Was the road under construction or some other thing that might affect liability but won't affect the police investigation? You know, it depends on what it is and how it is as to how deep the police are going to go in that kind of thing.
And you're going after everybody in that case. You're going after
so we sue we sue everybody. We're very non-discriminatory. We sue everybody. So that's basically our thing. We go and we try to figure out liability by evidence that's put forth by all the defendants. So we want to sue everybody involved to make sure that we've got all the correct defendants at the table.
And road design can be a thing. Because I was doing mainly fatality investigations since the mid-'80s, so for most of my career, I was also involved in inquests. And I remember there was a new highway built. It was called Highway 403. It's an old highway now, but it was new. We had a bunch of fatalities. There was an inquest. And the jury, coroner's inquest jury, came out and said, we don't like these certain design features and you should never do that again. And that's good. They won't do that again. Fast forward, there was a new toll highway being developed called 407.
Yeah.
And I watched them build it, and they were putting the same mistakes into 407.
Right.
I submitted some reports through headquarters and basically got a pat in the head and told to run along.
Not to Cam Woolley.
Well,
not on my watch.
My watch.